Restaurant Unstoppable, episode 705 with Krimsey Ramsey. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, Krimsey Ramsey. Krimsey, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Super unstoppable.
Yes. I cannot wait to get into today's conversation. Chef Krimsey Ramsey graduated with a bachelor's in Petroleum Engineering from Louisiana State University. Krimsey also has an MBA from Texas A&M Corpus. After 5 years as a petroleum engineer, Krimsey had the extreme awakening and decided to change her life into one of positive activism through opening a restaurant. In 2017, Krimsey's Cajun Kitchen in North Hollywood, California, the world's first 100% Cajun restaurant, was born. Today, they're about to go into their second location with the mission to spread good voodoo for themselves, our earth, and our planet's inhabitants. I cannot wait to dive into your story, but let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Okay, my mantra's a little dark, but I like to remind myself that I'm going to die every single day.
Why?
It's got a positive flip side. So when I remember that I'm going to die, nothing is really that scary.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it makes you live every day to the fullest, too, does it not?
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, it's like, am I going to do this after I'm dead or before?
Yeah, I love it. Does that have anything to do with your spider tattoo? To remind you?
I mean, sort of. Everyone's always like, why'd you get that tattoo? And I'm like, well, I thought it was really cool.
It is pretty cool.
And that's sort of the end of the story.
I love it.
Yeah, my parents were thrilled. Yeah.
That's the end of the story. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
We're going to sign off now. So take us to where it makes sense to start telling your story. I mean, you went to school for something totally outside of the hospitality realm. Take us to that point. Let's learn about what got you to opening your own restaurant.
Sure. Okay. And before I do that, I don't know how important this is, but I heard you say the first 100% Cajun restaurant. Which isn't true. It's the first 100% Cajun vegan.
Vegan. I probably did say it wrong, so thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, I'm like, what do I do with this information? Like, interrupt? Or
no, please do. Thank you for interrupting.
So the question was, how did I get here? Why did I leave?
How did you get to this whole situation? I like to kind of
paint
a picture of like where my guests, who their mentors were, how your previous life influenced who you are today, maybe lessons you learned through being a petroleum engineer. Who knows? A lot of systems, processes, I'm sure, kind of influenced you.
Yeah, so this is open-ended.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me not chew ice in the mic. I think all this was born when I first went vegan. I was living in Louisiana, and I had this silly idea like, ooh, Cajun vegan restaurant. No one's doing that. That'd be cool, but that would never work. Fast forward 10 years later, I'm doing it, it's working, and I'm like, holy crap, it's working!
Nice.
Like, who knew, Nice. But as far as like the transition from my old life to this life, I wasn't unhappy. I'll start there. I was just sort of like doing the things I was supposed to be doing. I was working a job that was great. I was having like a good bit of fun with it, but the bigger meaning was sort of missing for me. I worked for an oil company, and that's totally not aligned with who I am. It's just sort of what I fell into as I was growing up. So once I realized that was going on without me realizing it, I decided to change it and wanted to be more involved in things that I actually cared about.
Okay. So specifically around, I'm assuming the things you care about, activism around veganism. So dive into what it specifically was like jabbing you in the edge or the side, what did you care about?
Yeah, well, so I think activism takes a lot of different forms depending on like what you're being an activist for. For veganism in particular, there's lots of different ways that people like to do it. Some people are more like in your face, like here's what's going on behind the scenes, everyone should know. Then there's people more like me who would rather create just an environment where it's like open and accepting, like come see the fun side of veganism, and then you can learn about the nastiness in factory farms
I will
later.
point out that you are welcoming and accepting because I'm wearing my Pro Pig hat right now, and you guys haven't yelled at me or kicked me out
I'm assuming that you just love pigs.
I do love hugging pigs. That's what it is. Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I ignored the knives. I don't know what that's about.
So thank you for being welcoming to us outsiders. So going back a little bit, this idea of paint the picture of where you were in 2007. Like you were still in school, were you not? Because you did the petroleum thing for 5 years. So I'm assuming that was around 2008.
I graduated college in 2010.
2010. Okay.
Yeah, and I did about a year and a half of like field work.
Okay.
So I was like, on the job sites and the oil fields, on the rigs, like playing around doing silly stuff, but also learning a lot. And then I had a few years in the office where I was like managing projects, and my career took a little bit of a turn towards project management and like facility engineering as opposed to petroleum and geology.
Okay.
But, I'm down for the ride, so I'm like, this sounds fun.
Well, there's some nuggets here. I feel like you must have been set up for success because of this experience. You said project management.
For sure.
Like, I'm thinking systems, organization. What were the biggest lessons that you think set you up for success in your previous life leading into this?
One of the biggest things, especially in the beginning and as we're rolling into opening our second restaurant, is just understanding how to set up a project in general and then like schedule and budget, stick to it.
Okay.
And doing more front-end loading work. That's a buzzword that we used to use it at the old spot. But front-end loading, so meaning like getting as many quotes as you can, not just saying like, oh, I think kitchen equipment is going to cost X amount. You get as many quotes as you can, you try to get as close as you can, but then you put an accuracy range on that front-end loading. So at some point, like when I first create the first budget for opening a store, I assume that there's a margin of error of up to 50% on the high end and probably more like 20% on the low end. And as we go through the project, we hone down and we're like, oh, okay, now we see more, we have a lower range of uncertainty and we know more what we're getting into.
Yeah.
That was the biggest takeaway.
Okay. So you said, understanding how to start a project, the first thing front end loading, front end loading. Wow, that's kind of hard to say.
FEL.
Yeah. And then what else do you need to know to pull off a project? Because opening a restaurant is like a friggin' project. What else did you learn about how to start a project?
Well, of course, your team is going to be one of the most important things there is, and like finding the right people. I think over time. Well, in the beginning, I was doing a lot of stuff myself. Now I'm more open to outsourcing because we have a little more money now. It's not so we're not shoestringing it as much. But I still try not to be wasteful with it because there's a lot of stuff I can do and like doing myself. But so these days, I'm more likely to outsource, give it to someone who actually knows what they're doing, and then they save me time later.
I think there's a level of like. Maybe it's just like pride that some people have, that they think that if they outsource something, it means that they can't do it.
No.
I don't know why. Do you agree with that? That's kind of like a, I don't know, like a.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
Like it was a little bit hard at first. So when we first opened the restaurant, for the first week or so, we were so slow that I was just like, oh, I'll work it myself. Like I'll do the cash register, I'll cook, so I would like take someone's order, run to the back, and be like, okay, crap, what am I doing? Like gotta figure it out. And then by the time I was ready to relinquish some of that, because that's not reasonable, you can't run a business that way, I found that the person I put in charge of it was like better than me. I'm like, oh, cool. So all I need to do now is focus on finding people to do these things better than me, replace myself, and then I do other stuff. Okay.
So the big things I've taken about a project is the front end loading.
Yes.
I said it way better that time. Whew. And delegating basically is what I'm getting from anything else that we can pull. Or should we pull back a layer in one of those things?
Pull from engineering in general or like project management?
Yeah. Because you're doing a great job. And you had no restaurant experience before this. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, pretty much no restaurant experience. Like, I mean, I worked in restaurants in college, but like not any important jobs. I was like that chick who like came in after school and like did her work and was like, bye. Okay. Not like trying to figure out the P&L. You weren't paying attention or anything like that. No, not at all. I'll slice a tomato, sure.
Okay.
I mean, in talking about budgets, I think scheduling is just as important. It feeds into the budget. Yeah. So you got to know how long stuff's going to take. So you hear all these horror stories about restaurants opening and, it takes an extra 3 months or 6 months. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. But if you have a budget and you're short on capital, you don't have unlimited funds, then that 3 months or 6 months can put you out of business. You close your doors before you ever open them. Absolutely.
When you're doing this front end loading, what's that communication look like with all these different people that you're talking to about potentially doing business? How do you manage those relationships? And is it can it get a little weird when you have like 10 open conversations going to get the same job? Do you see people starting to lower their price? Like, is there other benefits to that? I'm just really curious.
Oh, you mean like quoting?
Yeah.
I think one of the major benefits of doing the work ahead is sort of vetting who actually knows what they're doing. So when I'm talking to a contractor, I already have my plans. I might not know exactly all of the final details, but that's an opportunity for me to be like, what would you do here? Or what would you do there? And then based on their answer, I can go, okay, they know what they're talking about. Or I go, oh boy.
Yeah, so this is good. Give us some more details on how to vet somebody for a job.
Okay. So a small example would be, let's say I'm putting up a new wall in front of house in a new restaurant, and I'm like, here's my plans. Like, I'm thinking about a half wall. What do you think that'll do? Like, will that be good for the sound in here? And really the answer I'm looking for is nothing super specific, but I do want them to take into account that, like, oh, well, what kind of ceiling do we have? Mm-hmm. You know, is it like the acoustic ceiling
tile?
Like
you know the answer, and you're seeing if they're going to pick up on it. You're putting them through with...
Exactly. I know my answer, but I want to see either do they give me my answer or do they give me a better answer?
Okay.
If they give me anything less, then I'm like, this isn't going to work out.
Okay, I dig that. Yeah. So when you have... does it get weird when you have multiple like relationships open like that? Have you ever pissed anybody off?
Oh, you know, one time there was this awkward moment though where I had two people coming in for an electrical quote, and they like showed up at the same time, and it's like that's not really like good manners. It wasn't. Well, I couldn't have avoided it. But it was.
I mean, I think it's smart to get quotes to pull the mean or the mode or the median or whatever, the average, right? To get an idea of like what it's really going to take.
Yeah.
I think that's super smart. But I just wonder sometimes if when you're managing multiple relationships for the same job, like how that can go.
It's never really been a problem for me. But also I'm a very organized person. So like I'm organized with correspondence. I'm organized with like who I'm meeting with, except for the oopsie daisies every once in a while where someone shows up early and makes it awkward for everyone.
I feel you.
Yeah.
So basically, what I feel like at this point in your life, you're making good money. I'm assuming as an engineer, you weren't unhappy, but maybe you weren't fulfilled. Is that kind of what was going on?
Yeah.
So why weren't you fulfilled? What was the void?
Still not sure. But I think like there's no real point to life, right? So we just have to like do things that we want to do. And I found myself in a place where I was doing a pretty cool job, but like, why?
Yeah,
you know?
I can't help but like I probably beat the shit out of Maslow's hierarchy of needs way too much. But self-actualization, it's not enough to have a paycheck.
Right.
You need that definite purpose in life. You need to feel like you're giving back. You need to feel like you're being seen. Are you seen as an engineer?
Now?
Were you then?
I think so.
Were you?
Yeah,
so
I mean,
that wasn't
it was sometimes it was a little weird because I was like a very young female in a predominantly male industry, especially in petroleum. They're like even more male dominated.
So why was that weird? What made that weird?
Just like when I was out in the field, like, oh, are you the intern? And I'm like, no. But that's okay. I understand.
Yeah.
The other part that sometimes made it weird was that they didn't know how to behave around me.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, there's a girl in the room. Like everyone, sit up straight and button up. And I was more like, I don't.
Stop acting weird around me.
I forget that I'm not a man.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I can see how that might be a little deterring.
Yeah.
Anything else that's worth bringing to the surface on the earlier days before opening, or like really living intentionally to start on this new path?
Maybe so. Not so much about work, but I think in general, up until my late 20s, I was just doing what I was supposed to be doing. Like I'm from the South, so
going through the motions.
I dated my high school boyfriend. I married him when I was 19.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were together until basically right before I quit my job.
Okay.
So there was a lot going on for me at this time where I think when we separated, all of a sudden I was like, oh, I can do anything I want.
Right.
Oh my God.
That's how I felt when I left aviation.
Yeah. You just realize that like whatever you thought you had to do, you don't actually have to do.
It's a huge lesson. So when you discovered this, actually, I'm gonna sit on this question. I'll ask it when we come back. We're gonna take our first question. We're gonna take our first break to thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back. This episode brought to you by MarginEdge. Never deal with a paperwork nightmare again. So the question I had for you is when you realized that like the sky's the limit, you can do anything you want, how did you start living intentionally? What was the first thing you did?
First thing I did was got rid of all my stuff.
Okay.
Because I didn't really want the stuff.
You're making me like sing on the inside right now. I think that's so important when opening a restaurant. I think we have all this stuff, and all those things are liabilities. It costs money to keep stuff someplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was, dive into why you want to get rid of all this stuff. Get into the detail there and how that served you.
Yeah, I guess, I just started looking around in my life and I was like, what do I like about my life and what do I not like about my life? And even down to like the physical objects in my house. Like, do I like this bed?
Does
not
it spark
really.
joy?
Yeah. Who's that? Marie?
She's Japanese, I think.
Marie
right?
Kondo?
I know she's at least Asian.
She's read her book.
Yeah, it's like the organization person.
Yeah. I actually haven't read the book, but I live by those principles.
Yeah.
I assume roughly.
Yeah.
So I want to get rid of all my stuff and like just go wherever I wanted and start over, sort of ish.
Okay, so when you got rid of all of your stuff, like paint that picture of like what you had to your name.
Well, I had a 2-door Dodge Challenger. I was living in Texas, oil country.
Car.
Yeah, it's so Texas. I don't have it anymore. Actually, I don't have a car at all anymore.
Nice.
But yeah, so I packed what I could in my Dodge Challenger, which was basically like my clothes and toothbrush and a lamp.
Yeah, it's like toiletries.
Yeah, more or less. And then I was like, I think I want to go to LA because I wanted to be involved in the vegan movement somehow. Mm-hmm. And I figured I should pick a vegan hotspot to start, just sort of like figure out what to do.
So this point in your life, you're like, I'm going to make this restaurant happen.
Like pretty much.
Before you made the move to LA, like was it intentional that you were going to open this restaurant at that point, or was it just kind of like lingering in the back of your mind?
Yeah, tough question to answer because I did want to make it happen, but also pretty much my whole life, never really had a good plan. I'm just like, I think this is what I want. I'm going to start doing little things to head that direction and see if it works out.
Okay.
So I was like, first step to opening a restaurant in LA is getting to LA.
Well, one of the questions I was really curious about was why LA?
Yeah. Well, the vegan thing helps a lot. So what I wanted to avoid was opening a vegan restaurant somewhere where there aren't a lot of vegans and having it fail and not really knowing truly why.
Yeah, and I think that I was wondering if that was intentional. Like, you got to go to where your market is. Mm-hmm. And if you're passionate about something, are you passionate enough to pick up your entire life, stuff it into a 2-door Dodge Challenger, and go to where you're going to be successful? Was it a Challenger? Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Okay. But like that's a good filter. You know what I mean? Like, are you willing to move your whole life to go to the place that will support the thing you want to do?
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that was like part of like the strategy in the back of your mind.
Sort of. You make it sound a little more like professional.
But it's a big thing, and maybe it was by accident, but I think it's really important that we're being mindful of that. And I think LA at this time, going back to 2015, was probably the best place where your target market existed.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there were a few. So I looked at like LA, San Diego, San Francisco, Portland. But the reason I wound up in LA specifically is because my sister was already here.
I was curious who came first. Okay.
She was doing music here. She's still doing music. This is my sister Jess. She's great.
Yeah.
Can we do a little tangent about Jess?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Jess she's an artist, and I keep dragging her in to like help me with stuff. She works for me full time now.
Nice.
She works with me. I don't tell her what to do. But she handles like all of our marketing, design, like anything printed. If you see a flyer, she did it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been spectacular. I never thought in 1,000 years I'd get to do this with my sister.
So that's another really big point that you bring up. You have support here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you're going to need support when you're opening a restaurant.
Yeah, I was like, I need to know one person at least.
Exactly. So I think when we left off, we were talking about the importance of going to where your target market is. Are you willing to pick up and open the thing that you want to do where it's going to be most supported? You had your sister, you had family. What else brought you to LA? What were the variables?
Oh man, like the beach? I don't know.
That's
to me,
good
like,
enough of a variable.
LA is magical for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. For me, it was always less about like the things that are actually happening here and more about like, whoa, have you been to Venice Beach? Like, have you been to?
I haven't yet.
I go snowboarding, so there's like snowboarding stuff nearby. I'm not into Vegas, but if you wanted to go to Vegas,
it's like
you
a 4-hour
could.
drive, right?
Yeah, it's close. So there's like, it's just like this really cool hot spot, and I like the people here.
Nice.
Like, people are open-minded, and you can do whatever you want, be whatever you want. No one really has anything to say about it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna preface this going the next section of our conversation to what you did, what Krimsey did to get her restaurant off the ground is what I would recommend everybody do if they don't have a massive access to cash flow or whatever.
Yeah.
Take us through the process when you decided, when you're on board, like I want to make this vision of the first vegan Cajun restaurant. And I apologize if I missed that vegan part in the intro. What was your plan of action? How were you going to execute this? Take us through your thought process.
Yeah, so thought process is always step by step with like sort of a cloudy vision for a few steps ahead. If I get too far ahead, I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
And you sort of get stuck, like that's where I want to be. Mm-hmm. Actually, so when I first moved here, I didn't know that it was going to be a Cajun concept. Just like I want to do something that tastes really good, create an environment that's like friendly and not to get too hippie, but like a loving environment. That's what I want. I want people to come in and feel welcome. So it doesn't have to necessarily be Cajun for that. I started testing recipes, and it turns out like what people were really interested in. They were like, "Oh, you do jambalaya?" And I'm like, "I mean, I can. Is that what you want?" And sort of went about it that way. I was doing festivals and pop-ups and catering. And at some point I was like, I think I'm ready to open a restaurant. So I started looking for secondhand spaces just because I'd done my research, heard about the nightmares of like permitting, and it's going to cost 100% more than you think.
Brakes. Yeah. Tap the brakes. We got to dive into some of this stuff. Yeah. Why don't get too far ahead? In general? Yeah.
I think because if you get too far ahead, then you can't really pivot effectively to make something that works. Yeah. You know?
And I think that it's really important when you're small too to be able to pivot, like, and you're in the process of collecting data and information. You're feeding these people that are across from you. They're giving you feedback. They're telling you what you want. Right. And if you get too invested, too far ahead, you can't adjust to give the people what they're asking for. Right. So when you start with this open mind, right, you have a general direction. I call it like if you look at a compass, right, and you have half the compass you can go generally north, half the compass you're going generally south. Right. Just head in a general direction. Yeah. And over time, start honing in until you get that specific 359-degree direction. You know what I'm saying? But it gives you options, right? Do you want to compound off of what I shared? And how that served you, maybe? Give me an example of, like, by keeping it open, how that ended up as a good thing.
Well, I mean, the biggest example of keeping it open is just being open to the idea of a Cajun vegan restaurant. It sounds absurd. Like, right. So I didn't think it would work, but people kept asking for it, and I was like, cool, let's try it out. And then over time, there have been, like, smaller pivots because of, like, listening to people. Our menus changed.
Like what? Give me an example.
So we actually initially didn't have po' boys, like when I first started cooking and stuff, but it was just something that people kept asking for.
It's pretty kind of good. Like you think of like New Orleans cuisine, it's like one of the first, like, maybe next to jambalaya. Yeah. It's like one of the next things you think of.
Exactly. But I was like, it's a sandwich. Like why? You know, I grew up eating them. They're good, but like I don't get the hype. Yeah. But then once I put them on the menu, I was like, oh, you know what? They're right. These are really good. I just haven't had one in a while. Right. So just listening to people all along the way regarding like even where we're going to open. Yeah. We're kind of in a weird spot. Like a lot of times people, they'll drive up here and be like, how did you pick this place?
Well, that's actually, I'm happy that you're bringing this to, because LA, but you're not really in LA. You're in North Hollywood. Yeah. North Hollywood, it's maybe a 30-minute drive from the center of LA.
That's
depending
fair.
on the time of day.
Yeah. It could be between 15 minutes and 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So why this neighborhood specifically?
This neighborhood specifically because there were no vegan options really around here when we first opened. Now they're sort of popping up, which is great. Yep. But also because there are markets nearby, and we're sort of like we're a destination between all these markets.
Yeah, I've definitely seen this trend with location selection. The hotspots aren't in like the heart of the cities anymore. They're on the cusp. Yeah, they're on the edge where you can get a better rate on location, and it's going to be, if you can hang on for a year or 2 or 3, the rate at which cities are growing, and I hate to say the word gentrifying, but it's true. Like, if you can get in early enough, you can ride that wave, right, and become a part of the community as it's growing, as it's scaling.
It's been great to be a part of the community. Like so I was in here the other day, and someone was just walking by. We were setting up for the Mardi Gras party, and he was like, "Thank you for what you've done to this intersection. Like, it's totally changed. You know, this is a great turnover, and like we're so happy you're here." And
that
I was
must
just
be
like,
so great to
I was
hear.
like, oh yeah, happy Mardi Gras.
It's amazing when you make what you do about loving how it comes back to you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So festivals and pop-ups, we gotta hang out here for a while.
Sure.
I think this specifically is what I'm talking about when I say like this is the path to take. I think a lot of people for some reason are like, food truck. I need to do a food truck. Like
people ask me about food truck, and I was like, I looked into that, of course. Yeah. It's like just as difficult, not really much cheaper, and now you have a circus on wheels. Like,
I think it's wouldn't not be more expensive. I mean,
it kind of it depends, and then people don't know where you are all the time. Yeah. I was just like, you know what, I've been
that's
doing
an investment.
Yeah, and I've been doing festivals and pop-ups. I know what it's like to pack up food and put it away. Like, I would like to just leave it in the walk-in. That'd be great.
Yeah. So I really want to pull the nuggets of knowledge out of your brain during this area. Like, when you were getting started, the first event you did, take us to that first event, or that first thing that you fed somebody with the intention of getting feedback. Take us to that point.
Yeah. Okay, so the first event was really more of like a backyard party. I had been doing food on Instagram, and I sort of got started by doing a food blog. It was just like, here's some vegan recipes and stuff that I'm...
No, seriously.
Yeah, and I was writing a cookbook at the time kind of simultaneously while I was doing these pop-ups and stuff. And so I decided to just reach out to my internet community and be like, hey, and friends in real life. But and just see who wanted to try my food and like give me actual feedback. Like I handed out like paper and pens and was like, here's gumbo. What do you think? Like, what do you think about consistency, flavor?
So where were you hosting these events?
In my backyard.
In your backyard?
Well, my sister's backyard, because I was like living on the floor.
And what tools? Just Facebook? Just Facebook to get the word out?
Mostly Instagram. Instagram's always been the platform.
So you were new to this community. You didn't have a lot of people that you could, your network was not here.
Network was small, but I met people like when I would do a pop-up and they'd love the food, then I'd be like, cool, let's connect. And then a lot of those same people who really love the pop-ups were the ones who showed up to the first like taste testing.
Yeah.
And that was so valuable.
So give us some advice on how to first pitch the pop-up, and then how are you maintaining these relationships so that they keep on coming back and they follow you throughout your journey?
Oh, that second part, I don't really know. I think like general advice for like doing anything is just be clear about it and be honest about it. So when I was reaching out to these people like, hey, does anyone want to come test the food? I wasn't like, hey, come to my fancy party where we're going to wine and dine you. I was more like, hey, like I think these things are good, but I would really like to get your feedback.
Yeah, who wants free food?
Exactly.
Yeah. Was it free or were you charging?
Oh, of course, yeah. Okay. No way I could charge for that.
Yeah.
So I guess
you're just throwing a party.
Free helps.
Right? And I think that's like at the core of what hospitality
gosh, you're right. I sort of didn't think of it that way.
You're just throwing a party.
Yeah.
And who doesn't love to throw a party and feed people? That's why we're in this friggin' that's at the root of what we do.
That's what we're doing right now.
Right? Yeah. And if you're not willing to do it for free, then it's not maybe the best. We need to make money doing this because we need to pay people. We need help. But if you're not willing to do it for free, then don't do it.
You're making me sound a lot smarter than I actually was. I was just like doing stuff.
No, like seriously, like Jess reached out to me maybe like 6 months ago or something, and I said when I'm in LA, but I actually broke my 5-year rule to come here because I usually make it a 5-year rule that you have to be in business for 5 years. But then I looked at your path to get here, and I think that in today's market, what you did is the best way to do it. And I can't talk to somebody that opened a restaurant 7 years ago because nobody was doing this 7 years ago using a blog. You know what I'm saying? Maybe a few people, but I think we can be intentional about it and really use that as our break into the industry. Because when you start a blog, were you also collecting emails?
No.
But you're collecting a following, though,
yeah,
right?
Collecting more like it feels like collecting a community in a way.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people they forget about that part. Like that business is really about relationships, and you have to actually care. Yeah. And it shows if you do or if you don't.
I love it. So when take us like into this point of your life where you're going to these festivals and these pop-ups. First, let's focus on festivals. How did you approach the festivals to even get welcomed into it?
Well, the first like real festival I did was actually I was kind of like out of my element. It was Vegan Street Fair, which I don't know how many attendees they had last year, but this is like a 30,000 person kind of event.
Okay.
And so I just like had my friends help me. Like Jess was there, my roommates, a couple like friends that I just met in LA. And we only served jambalaya and cornbread, basically. Okay. Because that was our thing, and we're like, we're good at this. Let's see how it goes.
Do one thing really well, though. Yeah. That's another lesson right there. Focus on one thing and hone it in, right?
Yeah, that's another. You made me sound so smart.
You're making it easy. Keep going.
Really, I just didn't know how to cook. No, I'm just kidding. So we did just jambalaya, and we just like, here we go all day long, served like hundreds, maybe thousands of people. So that was quite an intro to the event. But I think the reason I did it and was able to do it is because I just decided I was going to do it, and I signed up before I was ready and was like, all right, well, I got 3 months to figure out how to do an event. Yeah. Like, what do I need? How do I cook outside?
So what did you learn in that time?
Well, I learned a lot about like food safety and like dealing with the health inspectors. Like, what do they want to see? So that was really useful. But also,
where did you go to learn this stuff? I think that's maybe you don't get into all the details, but give us some of your resources
of health and safety.
Yeah, just maybe their website.
I would say the website, or just, even just getting a food handler's card before you need it is helpful. It just sort of shows you, like, here's what you're going to be into, like checking temperatures.
These people, we label them as the enemy sometimes because they can put us out of business, but they want to help you. They want you to be successful. So treat them as your friends and reach out to them and get their advice. They'll tell you exactly what you need to do.
They're not mean and scary. Like, unless you're not cooperating.
Yeah.
But we do, so we like them.
So any other advices? I mean, that was your first festival. How many other festivals did you do during this time?
I don't, probably too many to count since then.
That's a good example of how much you have to hustle to get the job done.
You do have to hustle a lot, and it is very hard work. It's like, 15, 18-hour days sometimes. I prefer not to do them these days because for me, that was sort of a step we still do, the only festival we do these days is Vegan Street Fair, just because it's a big event. It's really close by in North Hollywood.
It's your community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's our community. It's really well organized. Like, I'm friends with the organizer. She's great, Jess. So it feels like something that I'm already a part of.
Okay.
So it's a no-brainer every year.
Okay. So shifting to these pop-ups, you started the pop-ups in your own backyard, which don't need any permission to do that. I mean, you probably literally don't really need to pay attention to all those things that you were talking about as far as like
health and safety.
Yeah, it's a party.
No, I mean,
you treat it like a party.
Just try not to get dog hair in it and stuff. But.
Yeah. So take us kind of like, you started with your backyard, but did you eventually go to like other people's restaurants, or was it always just in your backyard?
No, always just in my backyard. Sweet. I never never really did anything in anyone else's space other than like pop-up events where they were having vendors. Okay.
So give me an example of one of those pop-up events.
So I did like farmers markets. That's always a good start.
Did you reach out to them, or did they reach out to you?
Definitely reach out to them. Nobody reaches out to me for anything in the beginning.
So take us through that process. Jess, was this you reaching out to people? Jess is off camera right now. Say it again.
Now I do reach out to people, yes, but not in the beginning. Krimsey was just sort of hitting people up, and I mean, you might got the occasional like wedding one adjudicator and stuff, you know.
This is so like backyard podcasting.
Right now.
So take us through that process when you like the email that you would draft the copy
to try to get into stuff?
Yeah, like how would you approach people? What wording and like verbiage would you use?
It's mostly like, hey, we're the world's first Cajun vegan concept. Here's our menu. We do these other events, and just sort of trying to build a resume. Like, hey, you can trust me to come in and do a good job. But it takes a lot of work. It takes getting rejected a lot.
Give me an example of how much work. Like give me some like numbers to show how much work it is.
Numbers. Ooh.
Like throw out some random ballpark numbers. How many emails you would send out?
Well, just for like one category for farmers markets, I probably contacted like 20 different farmers markets. Half of which I would show up in person after an email and be like, hey, I have this thing. Bring you samples or whatever. But it's tough, man.
Yeah.
People want to see experience, so you just have to kind of take the lowest rung on the ladder and be like, all right, I'm doing this so that I can put it on my resume, essentially.
Yeah, and it gets you practice, right?
Yeah. I've done some farmers markets where we had like the stream of people coming through was so low that like I might have sold 10 things.
Yeah.
But it's a thing that I did. Now I say I did a farmers market.
So the only other two things I'm kind of really curious about around this world of farmers markets and pop-ups are the tools you're using to kind of like create awareness about where you're going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Were you using like Eventbrite or anything like that? Or
no, I stuck to Instagram. That seems to be like where the community was.
Yeah.
It's where our people are, and it's where they're looking.
So what was your process for creating awareness around a pop-up? Like what would you do on Instagram?
On Instagram, I normally just try to let people know like what we're going to be serving, where we're going to be, kind of get interaction from people too. Like, hey, anyone live in NoHo?
Were you doing stories or just posts or TV? Like what was
at the time? I don't think so. I think
straight up posts.
Yeah, straight up posts.
OG Instagram.
Back in the day, yeah. It was simpler back then.
Yeah. So the other, I think that kind of wraps up pop-ups, and unless there's anything that you think that, anything you didn't think of or anything you didn't
about
like
pop-ups?
Yeah, that you can kind of give somebody a heads up, like, oh, you should know about this before you do a pop-up. Anything like, have you ever been in a hot spot like, oh shit, I didn't even think about having to like bring silverware, like, or something like that?
Oh my gosh. Well, if we're talking those details, I have a super long list. I should like publish the list.
Do you have a punch
checklist.
list? Yeah, if you do, please share.
I'll have to look and see if I can still find one. But I'm sure I do.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's definitely a punch list. I would say that a lot of times when I go to festivals, a mistake I see people making is pricing their food way too low.
Okay.
Especially in LA, like food is just not cheap. I think a lot of people are disconnected from the true cost of food. With so true. Like,
it's an issue.
Yeah, for sure. People don't understand the cost of organic things. If you're using organic things, we don't use meat and dairy or anything either. But like people aren't aware of the subsidies and think that cheaper than it should be. There's labor that goes into it. There's lots of overhead. So you can't short yourself. Even in the beginning, you got to price it what it costs.
Yeah, I'm really happy you're bringing that to the surface, because I think for a long time, we as an industry, people within the industry, were so reactive to the market and so reactive to our competitors and people around us. Like, well, what are they charging for a burger or a vegan burger or whatever? So we just would constantly undershoot each other. And then what we did is, to stay in business, we had to start getting cheaper and cheaper, crappier shit, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, we need to charge what food is worth, because one, we don't want to degrade the quality of the food we're putting out there to stay in business, and two, we just need to give ourselves what we deserve and what our employees deserve, right? So charge what the food is worth. Make it a percentage of what you invested to put that plate out.
Yeah, exactly. I think the people cost is often just not considered. Like here, like we're not required to do it yet, but I already have like a plan set up for health insurance for our full-time people. And it feels good to charge what it should cost and then like give the money back to our employees.
And it's really important that we collectively as an industry start educating the public, saying, listen, like, you're a part of what we do. We need you to support us by paying us what it costs to deliver the service to you, right?
Yeah.
And if they love you, like you love them, because that's part of what you're trying to do, they will show up to support you, right?
They will, yeah. And we try to be transparent about what we're doing, and also like highlight our employees, because they're really like, sure, I'm sort of in charge of things, it feels like sometimes. Yeah. But they're the ones who are in here every day, like interacting, cooking the same foods, like making sure it's consistent. So like highlighting them and being like, these are the people who are making your food, I think it kind of like opens people's eyes to like, oh, there's more going on back there than I thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you can get a $1 burger from McDonald's, it's sometimes hard to understand, like, well, why are your po' boys more than a McDonald's sandwich?
And it's our responsibility to educate people on that. So like, it's really important. If you guys want to learn more about how to price your menu, I'll link to an episode I did with David Scott Peters on menu engineering. Him. Yes,
I work with him.
Do you?
Yeah,
he's awesome. So David Scott Peters, I'll link to that episode. And menu engineering, it's a really great episode around how to do that right. So from there, take us to where you were when you're like, okay, I think I got this dialed in. I think we're ready to open our first restaurant. Take us at that point and how you started living intentionally from there on.
Okay, so it's time to open the first restaurant. I started looking for spaces. In the beginning, I was open-minded about what kind of space, but after looking at lots of spaces, I'm like, well, for our budget, it's going to be a secondhand restaurant space, and we're going to try to keep it as cosmetic only as possible. So like, I don't want to move a wall. I don't want to touch electrical. I don't want to, like, we're not moving the toilet. We're painting. So I found this spot, and because we're in the valley and it's sort of like an area that wasn't really trendy yet, the rent was cheaper and it was something we could afford. So I just tried to stick to the rule of like, what can you actually afford? Don't overdo it.
Yes.
Because it's really tempting to just go in that, like, there's like a sexy part of town.
Yeah.
And, we'd be so busy if we were there, but we opened here in the armpit of the shopping center, and we were just fine. You know, if it's good, people will come. Yeah.
So, do you mind sharing some numbers with us? Like, what was your rent back a few years ago?
Rent was it was a base of about $32.50 or something like that. Okay. Which, you know, if you're in LA, you're like, whoa,
it's pretty good.
You know, other places people are like, that's high, but here $3,200 is like unheard of. Yeah. It was about between 900 square feet and 1,000 square feet.
Okay. And how much money were you projecting you would need to get this thing off the ground? What was your budget?
Well, so I'm tough with one number, so I was looking at a range of $40,000 to $55,000 to get it open.
Which is so low in LA.
Yeah,
holy cow.
It's low, but for me, it felt like, oh, this is reasonable.
Yeah. How many square feet was that? 3,200.
I think it was about like 960 or something like that.
960. Okay, and I cut you short. I apologize. Do you remember your train of thought?
Let's see. Where were we?
Oh, we were talking about the cost being low of the space.
Yeah, I think that costs get inflated a lot of times for new restaurants because there's this big giant team of people that create something together, and so there's just it's a heavier organization.
People are expensive.
Yeah, and I know looking back, I sort of wish that I would have had somebody, just because being an entrepreneur can be lonely in and of itself.
Yeah, it's lonely at the top.
Yeah, especially for a job like this where like everybody's looking to you. Something goes wrong, it's you they're calling. You know, it's you they're calling. So having a partner would have been nice, but the benefit I got was we were very lean in the beginning.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. I think when, for some reason, when we dream up our restaurant, we have this vision of what we want it to be, and we think that we need to go for that vision on day one. That's your 20-year vision, realistically. Where can you start today? And like we started with pop-ups, right? And then from there, you're like, what's the small, like the next baby step I can take to get a little bit closer to that ultimate vision, right? Because you don't want to set yourself up for failure. You want to keep your liabilities low.
Yeah.
And I think going back to what we said earlier, you started this journey with your Dodge of was it a Dodge
Challenger,
right? Yeah. So like the benefits of of keeping your liabilities low.
Yeah.
Makes it so much easier to be successful in this industry.
Yeah, exactly. And before I quit my job, I had like a nest egg so that I wouldn't be stressed about money.
Yeah.
So
step one, get rid of everything that you don't need.
Get rid of everything, plan for it, save. For most people, I'm like, don't quit your job while you're just doing pop-ups. That's like a weekend thing. Sometimes, I try to like be helpful where I can. So if someone comes to me with questions, I always want to answer.
Yeah.
And sometimes people show me their plan, and their plan is to quit their job tomorrow.
Yeah.
You somehow find $300,000 to open up a restaurant and then open it up. And I'm like, that's not a plan. That's disaster.
Yeah.
You got to enter a little more. You got to enter slowly if you aren't in this world already.
Mm-hmm. So you said $40,000 to $55,000 is what you were thinking that was going to take. And did you go over that budget?
No, I wound up spending about 35.
Okay,
which
wow.
I know. Even now, I'm like, I don't know. I did a lot of stuff myself. Jess did a lot. We painted everything ourselves.
I mean, you went into a turnkey situation. It was a pre-existing restaurant, right?
Sort of. It was an Armenian deli, I think.
Okay.
Is what it was. Or they had like, I don't remember exactly. They sold like Russian meats or something. It was something ironic.
So did they have the equipment that you needed to execute what you wanted to do?
They had like one of the most important things that I was looking for in a secondhand space was, is there a hood and the right type of hood? And, are the floor drains where they need to be? Because I'm not trying to like drill through the floor, install a grease trap and all that junk that you find out you need later. So there was some equipment there. Most of the work we did was in front of house, just making it more of like an inviting dining experience instead of like white walls, white ceiling, white tile floors. We warmed it up.
Okay, so I keep on clicking on the wrong thing. I'm trying to take notes right now. Actually, this might be a good time to break and let the sirens go by.
That does happen every now and then.
Welcome to LA. This episode brought to you by MarginEdge. Never deal with a paperwork nightmare again. So you just mentioned a few things that were really key. You're looking at like 1 or 2 or 3 details that would be a make or to break it when looking at your space. Hood,
yeah,
I think, which is a big one that people overlook all the time.
Yeah,
or maybe underlook.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, it's cool, we'll just install a hood. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, and drainage and electrical, was that probably on your radar?
Electrical, usually, no matter what the space is, when I was looking at spaces, usually the electrical was mostly fine. Okay, so I would say big things are like plumbing.
So why drainage and hoods? Was it costs?
Cost and permitting. Okay. So if you're installing a hood, it's a lot more than just like plugging a hood into the ceiling. Like you need some sort of duct through to the roof. A lot of times you don't really know until you get in like what it's going to look like up there.
Yeah. So where did the $35,000 go to? Majority.
Basically went to like the permits we did need.
Like
construction.
Which ones?
We just needed a health permit.
Okay.
And we had like a minor construction permit, but nothing like people are used to seeing.
How much does the health permit and a construction permit cost?
Oh, good question. It wasn't. Between like $1,000 to $2,000, I think, at the time. That sounds right.
Okay. And the construction?
Construction, we spent most of the money on just building out like a front of house kind of bar area. That cost us about $10,000.
Okay, that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, because we used reclaimed wood.
You're 11,000 right there.
Yeah, I didn't want to cut corners on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So what about appliances?
Appliances, that was some of the money too. We needed like a po' boy table and all the basics. I think when we moved in, there was maybe an oven, but it was a piece of crap, so we ended up buying a new one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when I was first looking for the first space, it felt very important to me that it had equipment in it. I wanted a turnkey space, but now that I'm looking for location number 2, that was like opposite. I was like, I don't want anyone's old crappy equipment. I want my own equipment because we've just slowly replaced everything. Yeah. You know?
Oh man, there's this resource. I'll try to remember to mention it in the show notes. There's this new resource. It's kind of like Websterant store, but it's like all like lightly used. I don't think it's lightly used. That. I think it's like not the latest model.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So like it's
I'm
online.
So interested.
Yeah, I will link to that and I'll make sure to mention it in the closing thoughts.
Cool.
But back to your story. Talking about the expenses, how do I question this? So I don't often draw blanks, but this is really good detail right here.
This feels great.
Right? So $3,500. Okay, here's the question. Sorry, yeah, $1,000. What did you figure out you needed to make a day or a week to keep the doors open at this initial investment of $35,000?
I was trying to make $1,000 a day.
Okay.
I was like, if I make $1,000 a day, I'm good.
Okay. And how did you do?
Not $1,000 a day.
Okay.
We started out really slow. I think something I learned from that was that you actually have to tell people you're opening.
Okay.
I was so scared that I sort of just opened the doors and was like, we're open.
I don't know if that's a bad approach, though.
It helped in some ways.
Yeah.
For the second location, I'm doing it the opposite. Like, here's when we're opening. Everyone come. It's going to be awesome. But because I was just sort of I was still in that trial mode. Like, I want people to come in slowly. I don't want to drop the ball in the beginning. I want to see what people think about it.
Well, I think the other variable, too, is, like, early on, like, your first employee, like, the food's going to bring them back, but also your encounter with them, your engagement with them, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a line going out the door on day one, how impactful are those first touches going to be?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
and
when
I
you get people
very
trickling in,
touches,
exactly, and then they come back because you get to put that imprint on them, right?
Yeah.
And you get to work out your systems, your kinks. You think it's going to go one way when you're like testing stuff.
It never goes that way.
Exactly.
Like, never.
Yeah. So like when you F it up,
yeah.
But they're standing right across from you and there's nobody behind them in line, like you can write the end of the story. You can make it right. You know what I'm saying? But when you're trying to file through people,
exactly.
Anything else? I'm talking too much. This is your time to shine.
Hi. I think most people do this when they open a restaurant, but I think it's super important to do friends and family night, then like a soft opening and a hard opening.
Okay.
I think for us, the friends and family was where I learned so much. Like, oops, that's not going to work in real life.
Yeah.
But it's your friends and family, so they're like, good job.
Yeah.
You know? Wow, it's so great in here.
Yeah.
And like everything's wrong.
Right.
And then your soft opening, people are still forgiving, not quite as forgiving as your friends and family, but you're better, so it's okay.
Yeah. So let's zoom back up to 30,000 feet. I think we kind of got really down into the details there. Thank you so much for getting into those details.
Of course.
I had a feeling with being an engineer, you're going to be able to give us some really good details. So, reflecting back, I mean, this is still kind of new. You guys opened in February 28th, 2017.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mardi Gras 2017.
Yeah. So, what were like the hardest times during these early days? Like, bring us to like where you were emotionally, the biggest mistakes you made that you wish you kind of had foresight about. Dive into it.
Okay. Yeah. There was a time period where it was very hard. I would say the first couple of months we were open, I was doing everything. You know, I didn't understand what it meant to work a 20-hour day. Just, you cannot compute until you actually do it and you know what it feels like. It's awful.
Yeah.
So one mistake I made in the beginning was not finding good help fast enough. I sort of like rolled into being stressed out, like, oh crap, I need help.
I need
Whereas
I
should have done it before.
Yeah.
So now I do that more. I'm like, oh, something's coming around the corner. We're gonna need more people. Let's get on it now.
Yep.
But so we were slow for the first couple months. We weren't even hitting our $1,000 a day. I was talking like, I don't know, 15 people a day through the doors would be like, oh, we did it, you know? And then I started to get a little discouraged, like, oh, what am I supposed to be doing that I'm not doing? And sort of had a moment where I was like, oh crap, this isn't gonna work. Like, I started thinking like, what's my runway? Where can I put money to make this work?
What do you mean my runway?
Runway meaning like how much cash do I have in the bank, and assuming nothing changes, how long is this place gonna be open before I'm like, whoops,
operating capital, basically.
Yeah, you got to be aware of that. I think runway for capital just kills people.
So when you started getting a little antsy here, how much runway did you have left?
I'm very conservative, so I still had like 8 months of runway.
Okay.
I was like, oh no, 8 months. Like I only have 8 months.
We just started rolling.
Yeah. So I started thinking more about what I could do to fix the problem, which is that people don't know about us. And we're in, like I mentioned, the armpit of the shopping center. So unless you're looking for us, you don't know we're there.
Okay.
But that turned out to work in our favor because it was kind of a hole in the wall feel. And people want a hole in the wall, especially in LA where everything's so like Instagrammed and trendy.
Yep.
But about that same time, there's this organization called Mercy for Animals, which I love, and they just happened to sort of like hear about us from something and came in and did a video feature on us, which got a ton of views. I don't know, like I want to say 1 million.
Did you reach out to them, or did they reach out to you?
No, they were just like, we're doing a special on vegan restaurants in LA, and I was like, oh great, like cool,
nice.
So they came in, filmed our food, released this video, and the next week we were just like, oh, we're in business now. this is great. So they had like a really pivotal role in helping us get off the ground.
Nice. Did you learn something from that experience?
Yeah.
From that point where maybe we should seek these people out, these influencers?
For sure.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, press and marketing is important. Branding is important.
So take us through from that experience. Like, what did you start to do to start to drive traffic into your restaurant?
I started to be more involved in the stuff that I didn't want to touch before. To me, like the whole, like, you know,
I'm so guilty of being the person who doesn't want to touch that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like the worst at like promoting my, like, I can totally like resonate with that.
I always had the attitude like, well, if people like it, they'll come.
I need a Jess in my life.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that mentality of like, if it's good, people will come, it works, but you got to be real patient. And in the meantime, like you're running out of runway, whatever. So yeah, I started working more with like partnerships and just linking up with people and being like, how can we help each other? Because that's really what it's all about.
I love it. So how do you collaboration is huge.
Yeah.
So take us through that collaborative process. When you see somebody who has something is worth linking yourself to, how do you approach them?
I'm just like, hey, what you're doing is really cool, and like I'm doing some stuff too. We should like grab coffee.
Okay.
A lot of times I don't really have a goal in mind. It's just like if I meet someone that's doing something that I respect or admire, I just want to sit down with them. I don't
give me a specific example of somebody that you're like, okay, this person's doing it right, and like how did that relationship, that collaboration evolve?
Okay. Well, it's always like by chance.
Okay.
But I mean, there's so many examples. I'll use the most recent one.
Okay.
So there's someone named Jeanette. She's like a marketing PR person in the vegan food world. And I was at this burger place, Monty's. Maybe you've heard of it. No?
No, I actually
okay.
haven't.
All right. Well, you should check it out. It's cool.
Okay.
Hey, maybe we can link you up with them.
All right. That'd be
They're
awesome.
doing cool things.
Please.
So I was in the area and I'm like, oh, Monty's cool. I'm going to try it out. Jeanette was sitting outside with Chef Roy from a vegan restaurant in San Diego.
Okay.
I was like, oh, cool. I know them. So I just, from like the internet, went to chat with them. Obviously no intentions, just like, cool, these people are doing cool stuff.
Were they like at where you were as far as like getting started, or maybe a little bit like open a little bit longer, a little more foundation established?
Monty's definitely has more of a foundation. I think they've actually been in business shorter than us, but they have like a good team behind them from several people that have been in the industry. They hit the ground running. So I would say that in terms of like what they've done more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So keep going.
So wound up just chatting with Jeanette, and she's like, oh, here's what I do. And I'm like, oh, great. I love what you do. Let's chat more. Chatted more. She's now like a part of our team on our marketing and PR side. She's great. So it's just like, you never know when you're going to wind up working with someone. I even, if you go into it not having a goal and just being genuinely interested in what other people are doing, and, it's hard to fake.
Make it about them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You can't
and
fake it.
If you approach somebody authentically, somebody that you admire, and you just praise what they've done, in a real, not in like a, I'm just trying to pull a fast one on you, I want you to think that you're this thing, so you are willing to help me. But if you generally show your admiration for somebody, it's amazing how much that relationship will develop and grow. And I think a lot of people too are like afraid to shoot for an operation that's slightly more successful or along their path, right? Because like, who am I to like try to attach myself to them? But you'd be amazed, like maybe they want, it's lonely at the top, maybe they want somebody to geek out with, you know what I mean?
I think people assume that I get approached a lot, or that like people bother me about restaurant questions. I actually don't get that many people contacting me being like, what did you do about this? Or like, do you have any advice on that? It's pretty rare.
Right? Yeah. Well, I literally just had this conversation with Mario Del Perro yesterday from Mendocino's Farm.
Oh my God.
I love him. He's amazing.
When you first said, like, have you ever reached out to anybody? He was the first person that came to mind, but we actually haven't met up yet.
Oh, really?
So I can't use him as an example, but I met him at a conference and was like, I love what you do. I'm a super fan. He's like, oh, okay, cool.
No, he's awesome. But like, even in the early days when they were getting started in 2005, you look at the people that he was talking to and collaborating with and working with, and Sweet Greens, Tender Greens, Chopped, and these are restaurants all around the nation that he was reaching out to talk with. What are you doing? And now they're at the top. The point is, these companies rose together.
Yeah.
And the reason why they rise together is because they share knowledge and they work with each other and they collaborate.
Yeah.
And you don't have to reach for those people now, but who are the people who are where you are, who you admire, who are doing it right, and climb together. Like, think about that. If you're listening to this right now, who are those people?
Yeah, find people.
Yeah, like reach out to them and then help each other out. I can't overestimate or over deliver the importance of that.
Yeah, and it's not competition.
No.
sometimes people are like, oh, there's a vegan restaurant open around the corner. What are you going to do? I'm like, go be friends with them.
Yeah, right?
We're on the same mission. Yeah. It's super chill.
I love it. So anything else that during those first few months that were super important?
To our success.
Yeah. Or like things that you just did not think about that you wish you had, that you can kind of give our listeners a warning of.
I think I didn't put enough emphasis on the guest experience at first. I just was mostly focused on, how do they pay for their food? Where are they going to sit? How's the food going to be made? And how do we put it on the plate? But I think one of the most important parts about running a successful restaurant is controlling the atmosphere of the restaurant. Like, it's not just what did they order? How did they pay? It's what do we say to them when they walk in the door? Like, do we care about them? When they're ordering, can we answer their questions? Is the music right? Is the temperature right? It's actually a little cold in here right now for me, but so I'm thinking about that now. I know, I'm always cold, so I'm one of those people.
Yeah, you're from Louisiana.
Yeah. I like hot and humid, disgusting. This is nice. But yeah, just putting more emphasis on the guest experience. Over time, we've pivoted and evolved into what we are. But in the beginning, it was very like, here's your food.
So take us through that evolution. Like, what were the key things that you started doing differently that you think has had the biggest impact?
I think training people. At first, it was just like, cool, you're here. Here's what you do. Figure it out. Like, do your job, please.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the experience.
Yeah.
I was like, I need help from other people. Mm-hmm. So now that I've gained the experience, we can write specific training manuals with, check boxes all along the way. It's so incredibly important. And it also sets your employees up to feel like they can actually do their job well and they know what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes. Why is that important?
Because if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, they're just going to do what they think they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
and often it doesn't align.
Exactly. If they're just going to be sitting like anxious, like, did I do that right?
Yeah.
People need the picture of perfection to know that they're doing the job done right.
Yes.
And like when they hit that mark, they go, nailed it.
Yeah.
And they need that jolt of like, oh, got it, right? So where'd you go to learn about these things?
About
systems, processes, training.
In the very beginning for basic stuff, there's this it's called SCORE LA. It's like for small businesses. Yep. You can pay like $40 to go to a class, and I went to a few on all different topics. One of the most impactful for me was like Restaurant 101.
Okay.
And I went to the class twice. So I started there and just absorbed as much as I could. But then I got a subscription to places like restaurantowner.com.
Yes, Gym Lab, great
dude. It's great, especially if you like have no idea where to start. It's just like, well, what does a training manual look like for someone else? And that was really helpful. And it costs money, but like nothing like it's so minimal. You pay a few dollars a month and you have access to all of this great data. Yeah,
I recommend everybody that's listening to this right now, I'll link to it in the show notes. Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/whatever episode number this is. I'll put a link. If you use my link, this is a little plug, but it helps the show. I need all the help I can get. Use that link because Jim will give me a little something, a little slice of whatever that revenue is that goes to him. We'll go to restaurant and stuff. Please help me. Keep going.
Help me, I'm poor. That's a quote. It's not you.
Right? It's true.
Where were we?
Oh, we're talking about the tools and resources you're using.
Yeah. Oh, another thing that we've done that is
before you go further, just to give the listeners an idea. So when you go to restaurantowner.com, basically it's like you can go and try to build all these things from scratch on your own, or you can get the templates for I think it's like $20 a month.
It's something that's like
totally
almost too cheap.
Affordable. Yeah. Get the templates and plug them into your restaurant. So it has all the framework you need to get started. I just want to make sure I emphasize the importance of this resource. It's so valuable. Cool. Pick it up where you're going to lift off. Sorry.
Where were we? Training. Oh, something else that I'm getting better, even like right now I'm working on is back to training for employees, but also creating guidelines on like, here's what you get paid and why. And if you'd like to go higher, here's a specific example of what that looks like.
Yes.
So like
why is
broken
that so
down
important?
by category. We call it like the crew pay matrix. Yeah. And it's just like for, in the category of cleanliness, here's how a 1 rates, here's how a 5 rates, you're a 3, and here's why you're a 3. Because when you tell people exactly where they are and why they're there, they have the opportunity to improve if they want.
Yeah.
Not everybody does. And like, cool.
But it gives them something to like reflect on. Like, okay, where am I compared to where I need to be?
Right.
And it gives them aiming points, right?
Exactly.
And it eliminates that whole awkward, like, hey, I'd like a raise.
Yeah.
I've been here for 2 years.
Yeah, we don't really have those conversations as much because you kind of go into your review. Another thing, we do quarterly feedback sessions.
Yeah.
Which is sort of Not really. I don't hear a lot of like peers doing that, but it's something that came from my experience in the engineering world.
Yeah.
Getting that sort of feedback on some regular basis helps you like align yourself with where you actually are, not like, oh, I'm doing such a great job.
Yeah.
Or sometimes people come into reviews thinking they're doing terrible, and we're like, you're like top of the pack.
Yeah.
Sorry you didn't know sooner.
Yeah.
But that's where we just align once a quarter to make sure we're all on the same page.
So were all these things coming or happening before? Because we're kind of add a little more context. I think we probably should have mentioned this earlier. This is your second location now. You used to be in the armpit.
Yeah.
Now you're at the forehead of the shopping mall.
Exactly.
So that took 6 months. And we mentioned earlier in the interview that after a couple of months, you weren't even breaking $1,000 a day. So just to put the emphasis on this collaboration again, right? So you went from being able to outgrow your space in 4 months.
Yeah. Because
you started getting collaborative. So was all this stuff happening, all this training in these systems and processes?
Oh, no.
Was that happened in this location?
Yeah.
Okay.
For like the first year, I would say, because like I had minimal experience and the crew we were hiring was sort of, in the beginning, the crew you hire is the crew that you have.
Yeah.
That's sort of like vague.
Friends
but,
and family.
Yeah. And like no one really knew what they were doing. So it took us a while to figure things out. And it was also very bonding. Like Shanae, our kitchen lead, she's been with us almost 3 years now. 3 years next month. And she's one of our first employees and like also one of our most special employees. I mean, everybody's special, but she truly cares about this place. She's seen us go from like what I would describe as a hot mess into like a functioning company that's doing good for the world.
It's not her baby, but she's like definitely the aunt.
Actually, we were joking this morning. We were taking some photos of her holding food, and she holds it like it's her baby, like looking at it like, oh, yeah, Mississippi mud cake.
Yeah, I love it. So we're over an hour of recording already.
Really?
Isn't that crazy how fast it goes? Anything that you were hoping we would discuss? Any big lessons over the past? Because we haven't really dove into the scaling from here on. Like what do you need to share with our audience? Like what goal do you have to share with us?
What goal? So upcoming goals.
It's like gold, but goals work too.
Oh, gold. I was like, okay, I'll share my goals. Sure.
Yeah.
Gold. Stay flexible and accept some level of suffering.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Again, that's the dark side of me.
Stay flexible. What do you mean by that?
Stay flexible meaning like if something isn't working, stop beating it in the head with the hammer. Just think about why it's not working and okay, so good example. We don't have a phone here anymore. We don't answer the phone. It's relatively new, but we used to have such a problem with, you can't guess when you're going to get a ton of phone calls.
Yeah.
You could be on the phone with someone, you're tied up 15 minutes, and then people are like, hello. Well, we got to the point where we basically need additional staff just to answer the phone.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, they're just calling to place orders or ask when we're open. Both of those things are available on our website.
Yeah.
So
redirect.
Yeah, it's a slight inconvenience for them, but overall we're able to give better service in here and be more focused and present with who's in the store with us. Mm-hmm. So I got that idea from I have a friend, her name's Joy. She runs a cafe in Thousand Oaks, which is also, she's like one of those people I'm like, you're doing so great, can I be your friend?
Nice.
And so now we are friends, and that's a thrill.
Nice.
But yeah, so looking at the phone, not like, oh no, we have to add more staff, but like, do we need a phone? Kind of like when I was getting ready to move across the country, everything I put in my hand. Do I really need this?
I think it kind of plays into like what you're going for. You guys have a very relaxed vibe here.
Yeah.
It's high touch, but not necessarily like high end, like fine dining where you're like you're like at the guest's mercy at any given moment. You know what I'm saying? Like as far as like like a 5-star, like, you know what I'm saying, like Michelin restaurant.
For sure.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Now someone's like, I'm not sure I like this. We're like, oh, well, what do you want?
So are you using a system to like an answering system or anything to like, or is it just like a ring off the hook?
Well, it rings twice and it goes to a voicemail of me being like, hey, we don't have a phone.
But are you being transparent, which I think is a really important thing too.
Yeah, well, I make sure I explain why.
Yeah.
Like, here's why we don't have a phone. Here's the info you need. If you can't figure it out, email me.
If I didn't just answer your question, email it. Yeah, I like that. So it's not like you just like, fuck it.
No. I still want to be able to get in touch with people, but usually they just want to get in touch with me about something not food related anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, do you rent the space out? They can't help them with that anyway.
So basically you're saying be flexible. Don't try to fit square pegs into round circles or round holes or whatever. If it's not working, pivot adapt.
If you got a menu item that sucks, stop trying to promote it.
Yeah.
Just get rid of it. Replace it with something
Now,
else.
you said be flexible and be, what was the other thing? You used a certain word. It was along the lines of,
it was something dark, wasn't
like
it?
embrace like the pain or something
Oh,
like
the
that.
suffering.
The suffering.
Yeah, there's going to be some level of suffering being an entrepreneur. Definitely there's down days. I think most restaurant owners would describe owning a restaurant as like just a constant series of extreme highs and extreme lows.
I'm so happy you're saying this, because I think there's this false perception out there that a lot of like consultants and gurus and experts are like, get out of your business.
No.
Work
It's
on
harder.
it, not in it.
This is much harder
And then go
than
sit
my
at the
old job.
beach, and it'll run itself.
Yeah,
I hope I never
totally.
see a day where everybody's sitting at the beach and having like slaves work their restaurant. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like, you should want to be in your restaurant, and there's gonna be pain, but I think that pain is like, embrace it. Like, this is, you chose this.
Yeah.
You want this. Like, you can choose to be pissed off and grumpy about the pain, or you can be grateful that you get to feel pain. You know what I mean? Like, and like, this part of the story. How do you deal with like the rough stuff?
How do I deal with the rough stuff? I just focus on like tasks. So, something goes wrong. It's very easy to just be like, oh, can I curse on here?
I already did a few times.
Well, fuck. Like, like, how am I going to fix this? And I give my moment to sort of spiral. And then I go, okay, what's the first step that a smart person would do?
Yeah.
And I just pretend I'm a smart person.
Yeah. I think it's also like to keep in mind that you have control over your emotions. And like, we are a very evolved species that we're not reactive like, a deer being chased by a hyena. Like, we can turn around and be like, no, leave me alone, buzz off. Like, and that's your emotion, right? Like, tell the emotion to cut the shit and be like, I'm going to override this and choose to be happy in this moment. And we have that privilege as Homo sapien, lean into it, like leverage it. Anything else you want to drop on us before we go to the speed round?
Nah.
Okay, one more question I've been asking all my guests. The mission statement is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry.
Okay.
How have you transformed? Who is Krimsey today versus the Krimsey 5 years ago when you set out to Los Angeles? Or was it? Yeah, it was 5 years ago you came here, right?
Yeah.
Who are you today versus that woman then?
That's deep. Let me think about that.
That's all I do is deep questions.
I think that I'm much better at being authentic these days, because this place has kind of forced me to be authentic. Like, what do I like? What do I want this place to feel like? And going after that and not saying like, but Sweet Greens does it this way and that's really great and they're, they look like this. This whole process has just made me go inward a little more and accept that what I like might be cool, actually.
Yeah, I feel like authenticity is a catchphrase today.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be authentic, and what are the benefits of being authentic? Not just saying you're authentic, but like when you're truly authentically authentic. That's so cheesy.
Yeah.
What does that feel like, and how does that serve you?
When you're truly authentic, I don't really think it's something you can put words on. I think that people just know.
Yeah.
I think like I know almost immediately when I meet someone if they can hear me or not.
Yeah. I think it's important that when you show up to a brand that is an extension of who you are, you can show up as who you are. You don't have to show up into this thing this concept that you created, right? It's literally like an extension of you, and it makes showing up that much easier. And like, I think that's what authenticity is. It just takes us like, when you're so transparent, you don't like, all of your scars are just out there for the world to see. You have nothing to hide. And to like rinse yourself from that anxiety is just so freeing, so rewarding. Like, that's when I think of like the value of authenticity, right?
Yeah, and not having to feel like you need to be cool,
right?
Because not being cool is usually pretty cool.
Yeah. I love it. This has been a great chat. Thank you so much. We're gonna take one more quick break to thank our sponsors, and we're gonna bust out a true speed round. This episode brought to you by MarginEdge. Never deal with a paperwork nightmare again. We're back, and the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor? A habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success?
I think just being completely myself and letting that translate into what comes out in the business.
Yes. What is your biggest weakness?
That I tell myself I suck too much.
I think it can be a weakness, but at the same time, I think it's what keeps us.
It's a driver.
Yeah, because it's never good enough, right?
Exactly.
And people are always congratulating me on my success. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I am nowhere near where I want to be. Like, I feel like a failure every day.
Same.
Maybe it's a bad thing, but at the same time, I think you can learn to appreciate it too, because it keeps you it keeps you going, right?
I think I don't know what most entrepreneurs do, but it feels like a lot of us tell ourselves we suck too much, and it like makes us not want to suck.
Yeah. What is one thing you do or one question you ask when you're building your team, a question you ask to find that right person to make sure they're a right fit for your business?
Yeah, I always try to probe and find out if they're engaged and connected.
How do you do that?
Usually by casual conversation. Do they hear me when I talk? Do they say things that are important to them? Do they open up?
I like it.
Yeah.
What is your biggest challenge today?
Focusing on one thing at a time, especially now with the second restaurant. It can be hard to just focus and sit down and do one thing for 30 minutes.
So how are you adapting to that? What tools and processes and habits have you developed to gain more focus?
I am a schedule freak, so I schedule my day out into sometimes 15-minute blocks. Just like, here's what I need to be doing for 30 minutes on Thursday at 2 p.m. It helps me keep me focused, and if something else pops up, I have to decide if I'm going to take something off my schedule and put that there, or if I'm just going to move this new thing to Friday.
So it's a combination of time blocking,
yes,
and using like the urgency approach of like,
exactly.
Okay, like, is this more urgent and important?
Yeah.
There's a quadrant. It's like important and urgent, important, not urgent, not important, not urgent, important, not urgent, or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's hard because sometimes I want to do things that aren't urgent, but they're fun. So I try to leave some time.
Well,
for
that's
that.
important though, because you need that mental.
Not burn out.
Yeah, you need that that mental cookie, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm gonna make sure I mention Indistractable, Nirayal's book, because he was recently on the show. Indistractable, which is a great book. I'll link to his episode in the show notes as well under this question. So what is your biggest? Wait, I think I already asked this question. Share one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team. This is a core value, a way to be, a way to act.
Yeah, core value is be transparent and connected.
Nice. How do you teach somebody to be transparent?
By example, just when I screw something up, I often send a massage. Send everyone a massage. No, I send a message out to the whole team where I'm like, "Oops, I did this thing. Like, sorry. Here's how we're working to fix it." And that sort of sets the tone of like, "Oh, well, she makes mistakes, so I will too, and it's okay."
I love that. What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your team? So this is something that's common within the four walls of your business, but not common throughout the industry, to go above and beyond.
Yeah, I like to have them be playful, just like with what they're doing, find joy in like playing with what they're doing and connecting with guests and just having a good time.
What's one book that's a must read to make us a better person or restaurant owner?
Ooh, well, this one's more about being a better person. I read Recovery by Russell Brand, which sometimes I say Russell Brand and people are like, what? But seriously, his book, it helped me identify where I was putting my anxiety into like these weird habits. And I think that we all have these weird habits that we do when we don't know how to handle something.
So what were you doing? Give me an example.
Well, the dark example is like drinking too much.
Ooh,
yeah, we're going to go there.
Yeah.
So I don't drink anymore. I've been sober for about 1.5 years.
Wow.
It's really changed my life. And this book, when I read it, the way he put things for me was enough for me to be like, oh crap, I'm doing this.
I'm not familiar with his work, I'll be honest. Why would people cringe at his name?
Because he used to be like in movies, like kind of like a college humor sort of, just like words were used to describe him that.
This is an R-rated podcast.
This is an R-rated podcast. Yeah, so he just, back in the day, he was also like sort of known for being a druggie that would do stupid things and pass out in the street.
Gotcha. So that's great. Thank you for getting real with us. I appreciate that. That's serving you well. I'll link to that in the show notes. I wonder if that's on audio. Do you know if that's on audio? Mm-hmm. So head over to audibletrial.com/unstoppable if you want to listen to that book. And that's a huge issue in this industry, is substance abuse.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. Being in LA, are you completely sober, or did you just take off?
Yeah, no. I think everybody's different. For me, I have a hard time with knowing when to stop. Yeah. So actually, I haven't had coffee since August either, because I was one of those, anything I get, I want more of it.
I was talking about marijuana. I was curious if you
No, I use marijuana.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, but not, it kind of depends. I go through phases.
Okay.
But here it's pretty normal. I think that it can be abused.
This is something that I want to explore.
Yeah.
I mean, now I'm opening up because like on my last road trip, I was alone a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, is there a right amount of marijuana to smoke?
Where
you know, like what is that amount? And I was
a little bit.
Yeah, like what is a little bit though? Like a little bit for me might not be a little bit for somebody else. You know what I'm saying?
I smoked way too much weed for a long time before I realized I was smoking too much.
How do you like? When did you know? What is too much?
Well, because I would watch other people do it, and they would just take like one tiny hit, and I'm like, oh, like did you even get anything?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm feeling it. And I'm like, okay. But see, I come from a world where I'm like, I'm gonna take the biggest hit anyone's ever seen.
I kind of do too. Like my friends, God bless them. I'm not really even a religious person. I don't know why I said that, but like bless their souls, you know, like are the hugest stoners.
Yeah. And
I love them to death, and I'm not necessarily speaking poorly about them, but like getting stoned was like literally passing a massive what's the word? Not even a joint. Not even. Well, yeah, those definitely got passed around. But like a blunt. You know what I mean? Like we would like three of us would smoke a blunt, and like, that's a lot of weed.
It depends on what you're going for.
Yeah.
Like if you want to space out, that's cool. But
so I think there's like that's one thing because it was such like a forbidden thing, right? For a long time, especially for our generation coming up, we're like the generation of dare. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I didn't.
Don't do it.
I didn't have it until I moved here. I was like 28 or something before I ever smoked weed.
I think these conversations are important though, because you need to have an idea of like using and abusing, right?
Yeah.
And like what's good, what's bad. Like there's a lot of benefits to the drug, but there's also a lot of cons if you overuse. So I would be willing to explore that conversation. This is supposed to be a speed round, but that's important.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question I have for you is, what is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough? Wait, did I just ask you this? I'm like,
no.
Okay, well enough or often enough?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with training. It's just telling your team exactly what you want. Show them exactly how you want it to be done. Don't floof around. If they do it wrong, tell them why it's wrong.
Okay. What is one thing that or one person that you've outsourced or service you've outsourced to make your business better? So like an expert and a specialist.
David Scott Peters.
Nice.
Yeah. And this is not a paid advertisement. No. I work with him on like food and labor cost tracking controls, and he has like a really great portfolio of tools to help with that work for everybody.
Beautiful. And is there one course that you're taking or one program that you're going through?
Actually, I'm working with him on something that he's doing. It's a little bit new. It's like kind of it's not one-on-one coaching. It's like group coaching, which is cool because you get a community of fellow restaurant owners while you also have access
What's
to
that
David.
look like? How many people are in the group?
Well, I'm sort of separate, so I'm like false selling it here. But I think there's like 6 people, he said, in his other trial.
So it's basically a mastermind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also do this. I'm not trying to steal the thunder from David, but I also do this. We both do it. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd say the same thing about me. So if you guys are looking for a community to join, like support groups are really huge. Just to have somebody to talk to get your shit out and to get access to multiple minds. Maybe somebody went through that same problem a month ago.
More than likely, yeah.
And maybe you have something that they're struggling with now. It's a very great way to compound off of each other's experience and knowledge and minds. And energy is another thing too. What is one piece of technology you've adopted within the 4 walls of your business, and how is it serving you?
I think whenever we started switching things to like cloud-based, like Google Docs, Google Sheets, all of a sudden it was so much easier to stay up to date with each other. You know, I change a spreadsheet, it's immediately available to everyone else.
That's huge. I think it's a great tool that we all have access to. It's free at first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you get so many people into the system, it starts getting a little more expensive.
Yeah.
But it's not much. It's like $3 a month, maybe $10 a month when you become an enterprise. It's totally worth it.
Just skip a couple bananas.
Yeah. Okay, this is the last question, and it's a doozy. Get ready for it. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy. What would those pieces of wisdom be?
Yes. First, everyone go get a therapist. Really. Even all you people that are scared of therapists. It's not bad or evil. It's changed my life. Second would be really listen to people when they talk. Just be present. Put the freaking phone away. My God.
Oh my good Lord. Thank you.
And then lastly, this one's simple, but for me is really important. Go outside more. Yeah.
Awesome.
Going outside solves a lot of my problems.
I have enjoyed this conversation so much, Krimsey. We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out. So who's somebody you respect and admire and would tune in to listen to them as a guest in the show? Call them out.
Okay, so for sure, Kat Cole. I think she's currently the president of Focus Foods, but she has a really interesting story, and I follow like everything she does. I'm dying to see her in person.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cat Cole, look out, I'm coming after you. I'd love to get you on the show. And how can we connect with you? I know you're opening your second location in Lakeview or
Silver Lake,
something Lake. When is that slated to open?
We're looking at the summer. I know. I hate saying the summer because then it's definitely going to be the fall.
Yeah,
but
we'll
I'm saying summer
before the end of 2020.
That's great. Yeah, we're opening 2020.
And if we resonated with you today, if Krimsey resonated with you today, what's the best way to connect to come maybe join your team?
Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, or Krimseys.com. Yeah, so the handle is at Krimseys, Krimseys.
And I'm not sure about the episode number of this show, but if you stick around to the end, I'll be sure to share the numbers. Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/whatever episode number this is. I'll be sure to link to any tools, services, or resources recommended in the show and how to connect with Krimsey. Thank you so much, Krimsey.
Thank you.
My pleasure for taking the time to share your story, your knowledge, your mentorship. There is no questioning. You are unstoppable.
Hell yeah.
Cheers.